were you involved in the whole process where you actually said, like you did with Gene, where this is good where it's at now, or it's
Sure,
yeah,
that's part of the job. And the writers, some of the co-writers that I brought in were very accomplished guys and really made a serious contribution. And so when I was presented with the result of that, it was generally a completed quality song. Whether it was a right song for the band at the time was something to be determined. But did I make suggestions or some minor changes or whatever in the song? Sure, that's all part of the job.
You brought Brian Adams in?
I brought Brian Adams in, and Adam Mitchell, who also did Crazy Nights. Gene brought in Michael Japp. But Brian Adams and Jim Valance, they did War Machine with Gene, which I just really came out great. I'm very proud of that. And Paul really did a lot of great writing himself.
So you're writing the songs, are they demoing them, or are you literally just writing the songs before you decide to do anything in the studio?
Write the songs before we do anything in the studio.
And then you get the songs, and so now what happens?
And we run through the songs, there's some rehearsal, and then we get to the point of recording. But I kept my word. We weren't going to get in the studio and start recording until we were armed with the right stuff. There was no point.
So at that point, when you actually head into the studio, obviously you start with Eric on drums. At that point, so where does it? Well, we talk about Eric obviously because it's the most asked question Michael gets, and he's trying to avoid it. But obviously, the sound of the drums for Eric are.
So Eric was a good player. I am very sorry that he's not here. One of the things that was so marked about him was that being in KISS was the most important thing in his life. He was somebody who KISS was the be-all for him. And that was something that got a lot of respect. Eric had never played with a click before, as I recall. I don't think that he had. But it was an important element in the recording process that he have a click kind of very low in the headphones, so the time was always kept, and it did help him. I often did a lot of cutting, that once a track was cut, we had 3, 4, 5 takes. Maybe there was a section of one that was better than another, and I would cut it in. After everybody left, I would just clean up the tracks and kind of rearrange things and so forth. And a lot of that happened with Eric, but it's perfectly normal for those days. I'm sorry, but he's gone. The drum sound itself was a big commitment that all of us made to really get something that was really powerful. Gene had a particular idea about the drums. He wanted to have the power of Zeppelin's drums, in particular John Bonham's. You can't really do that, you wind up looking at Gene or anybody and say, well, I can do that, you just have to give me John Bonham. Or you have to put me in the studio that he was in, or you have to give me those particular electronics that recorded him. Because John Bonham was kind of like a percussionist who they accidentally gave a drum kit to. He was just an incredible musician and had a big variety of things that he could do with that. So I had established over the years a certain kind of technique of recording drums with Telefunken 251s, a certain kind of microphone. We went about in the studio finding the right location to put the kit, and once that was found, then you wind up having to really treat the room itself as a separate instrument, because when the drummer hits the drum, there's the sound you're recording, but then there's also the reverberation in the room, which is all part of the character that you can use or not use. So we got very involved in that, and just like there isn't anything which is simple. I keep saying there's no manual for any of this stuff. You just need people that are committed to trying to get to a certain point and are willing to kind of stay up for days doing it. And that's what we did. And we came out with a drum sound that made everybody happy and made Eric feel like he could play better because he could hear himself really well. And he loved the way that he sounded because it was huge. And it brought a lot of character. I've got to say to all of you guys, I'm so appreciative of you and so appreciative of how many of you have come up and talked to me about Creatures and the impact that it had, not just on Kiss's career, but on you personally. And guys like me don't have that experience. We sat in control rooms behind panes of glass and slaved over records for a number of months. We really didn't get to see the impact that it had on you. And so to get that given back on these cruises has been a really big thing for me, and I really thank you for that. It's been very special. So, and then it comes time to mix the drum sound, and we flew to New York, and Bob Clearmountain was the mixer. And Clearmountain had this stylistic thing that he did where he would send sometimes an instrument, in this case the sound of the drums, into the bottom of an elevator shaft. And the reverberation would climb up that shaft where there would be another microphone, tube microphone hanging here. They would take it back, and you can take that and blend it in with the drums for character. Well, it sounds easy, but what happens is you send the drum sound to the bottom of the elevator shaft, and then what? Maybe it sounds like mud. And so it takes some time to clarify that and make that into something. And then you have to be sure that the microphone is hanging up there to collect this information is the right microphone. And does it have the right character? And so all these steps, all these different beats, nothing was so simple like, hey, let's throw it down in the elevator shaft. That sounds pretty cool. But there was a lot of technical experience that went along with it, and a lot of failure in order to reach a point of success. Just like with anything else. So I always like to mention that, because people say, well, put it in an elevator shaft, and it was pretty cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool, but there's a lot that goes into it. And nothing is straightforward, especially in recording.
Well, when you were working on the project?
And, you know, it's the same thing with Pro Tools and with Auto-Tune, like we were talking about.
Bruce Kulick in the house. I didn't know I was getting an introduction for a question, because I'm a fan, like you guys, of music and Kiss albums and people who are creative, like Michael James Jacson, okay? And before I ask him a question that I had...
that I can't answer.
No, you can answer this one. Only you could answer this one, actually. I honestly, I regret that I didn't have the opportunity to work with you in the studio.
Me too.
During my era, okay?
Me too.
But I was always aware of, you know, your contribution, and especially the Creatures of the Night album I was a really big fan of. And I wasn't really always aware of the guest guitarist. I heard someone earlier asked about certain tracks and all. So the question isn't about that, but it's related to that. You put together a cohesive album, okay, for Kiss, with that powerful sound and great songs and performances, and all the lead playing shined on it, okay, yet there was that very cohesive nature of the album. And to have various players from all different, you know, Robin Ford is not your typical lead player for a Kiss album, and yet it fit, and it was the blueprint for me to imitate for a Live 3 when we used to do it live, and of course that became a recording that I'm able to enjoy and make my own. But still, from that to Creatures of the Night, which we used to do live, also opened up a Live 3. So very, very interesting, varied guitarists who I looked up later on.
Sure.
But there's still they're all cohesive as if it was, you know, one amazing Kiss guitarist. So how did you create that? Because you needed to drive the ship, you know.
Created in the sense of being able to have all that be homogeneous? Is that what
Yes, that it isn't like, who's that guy? You know, nothing stood out awkwardly, okay? It was all just tasty guitar playing, and yet, to me, there was a thread throughout the record that it all fit.
Okay, so forgive me if this sounds a little pretentious, because I would hate that if it does, but there's a difference between certain players play on top of a song, and they play the part, and they play the notes, and they're in the groove, and you don't really particularly feel anything from it. Other players feel like they play from inside the song out. And when that's happening, they're an integral part of the song. So you're very astute, of course, and you're right. All those tracks and Creatures have a lot of very different, almost culturally different guitar solos, but they were all, to me, inside the song. And so they served the song, and by serving the song, the whole album was more homogeneous in a way. it's a weird word to use for an album, but it was a consistent personality. Even Robin Ford was so off the wall, this incredibly famous blues player. What's he doing with Kiss? He thought it was kind of insane that he was playing on Kiss, but something, he loved it because it was so outside of his normal field. And it was such a great experience for him to meet these guys who were iconic guys, and he really loved it. Stephen Ferris was Mr. Mister. What he played he played to the song more than the idea that he had to play to Kiss. So I think that if I had an answer, which I'm not sure that I do, but if I had an answer, it would be that stylistically these things fit the groove of the song, and therefore they were not invisible, but they were well-hewn within it. And that's what I would say.
Makes sense. Yep.
Give it up one more time for Bruce Kulick.